Hello, my name is Virginia Lawrence. Most people call me Gin, and I'm a family celebrant based in Callista in the beautiful Dandenong Ranges. And welcome to my garden. Thanks so much for dropping in. Now, I travel all over the place to marry people. I just love being part of a wedding, and I don't mind wherever it takes place. However, it's no secret to anyone that knows me that I'm just ever so slightly potty about plants, and I'm at my happiest outside. That doesn't matter if it's someone's small backyard, something on a much grander scale, down by a river, up in the hills, in one of our glorious vineyards, or deep in the forest. So let's talk one of my favourite subjects, garden weddings. Now, this can be something really small and quiet and intimate, or very loud and boisterous, or absolutely anything in between. You can keep it simple and just enjoy being in the natural surroundings and let that beauty speak for itself. Or you can style away to your heart's content, have a big theme running through the whole thing, and fill it with extra floristry. You can just have a few snags on the barbie, or you can spend a lot of money and you could get the caterers in and enjoy the finest food and wine that our region has got to offer. And then, of course, there are children. Having children in your garden is just perfect. There's usually extra space for them to run around. Nobody minds about sticky fingers, and everyone can relax a little bit. Or you can go for something a bit more sort of grown up and sophisticated and have an evening soiree. Whichever you choose, I think that being outside or in a garden means that the whole thing's just going to feel a lot more relaxed and easygoing. I'm a celebrant because, well, I love ceremony. I love ritual and the words and the special magic that happens when we all come together. Somehow, in a good ceremony, you're all transported to a different place where the rest of the world dims. Your worries just start to melt away because we're all there, focused on you with hope and good wishes in our hearts, excited about your new future together. For me, being in a natural setting just adds to that magic and that atmosphere and just makes your wedding day as perfect as it can be. But then again, as you know, I am completely biased. Please keep watching. Coming up, I have got some top tips for getting the most out of your wedding flower budget and how to really get that wow factor with your floristry. And then later on, I'm going to be talking to one of my neighbours about some of the things to watch out for when planning your wedding and trying to work out the difference between elopements, mini-minis and micro weddings. Hello, I'm here with Lou, who is the Redwood florist, and Lou has just dropped into my private garden party today to bring me over this fantastic ceremony arrangement. Lou, tell us about this arrangement.
Okay, I'd be happy to. As you can see, there's a mix of dried and fresh flowers. There's a lot of texture going on here. We have the specialty imported roses and some carnations there as well.
It's beautiful. I really love the colours, that sort of brown and peachy coloured rose and the sage green of it all. It's just so soft and gentle.
Yeah, it works really well together. Definitely the drama of the dried flowers with the softness of the roses really work really well together. Yeah.
And what would you use this type of arrangement for?
This is definitely for a ceremony piece. So it kind of frames the bride and the groom as they're getting married. It's also a piece that can be then transported to the reception centre as well. So definitely making good use of.
Yeah, I like that. So you're getting more bang for your buck.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And since we've got this ceremony arrangement, I think we're going to have our own champagne and cake ceremony in a little bit when we've done chatting. So if you're ordering something like this, how far in advance would you need to get in touch with a florist?
Yeah, so for your wedding flowers, pre-COVID, 6 months, 3 months, just depending on the availability of the florist that you're wanting to use. Now that all the weddings in 2020 have been pushed to 21, there are more limited dates and spaces in 21 for me personally, because I only do one wedding a weekend, just because I want to give it my full attention.
You really look after your clients then.
So so maybe, even 12 months before, with the way things are. And I understand the anxiety, if the style changes or you change your mind. And I think working with the bride and, reassuring that there's flexibility with that. And, until you've ordered the flowers, there is flexibility, and they can change the direction they're going in.
I think I would be totally that kind of person, because I just fall in love with every style and look that I see. It's so hard to choose, isn't it?
It is. The style, the boho look is still around, actually, and making it personalised to the bride, I think that's really important. Some brides, love the natives, and I think even mixing natives with the softness of, the more delicate flowers looks absolutely awesome too. So, whatever you love, I think you need to go with that.
Now, David and you've met David, and for everyone working at home or watching at home, David's actually standing behind the camera today. We just got married in a registry office. And my mum loves flower arranging, and so she ordered some roses from a farm for us, and just made a very simple bouquet for me to hold, and something for a flower girl, and some buttonholes. So I have absolutely no idea what the process is when you book a florist for a wedding. So can you, not that I'm thinking about getting married again, but can you talk me through it?
And after today. So after the initial contact is usually, via Instagram or Facebook or through the website or email. Often I'm doing weddings for family members I've already done before, and other family members are getting married, so they come to me. So we really, organise a consultation. They send through their inspiration pictures before the consultation, which makes the most use of the time available. Usually goes for about 45 minutes to an hour. Then I go away and do the quote, and then once I've been booked in, then it's just really waiting for the wedding day. Sometimes there is back and forth with, different ideas, or reassuring the bride, or some changes. So and then of the week of the wedding, that's when it all kind of comes together. Often there's more than one trip to the wholesaler, picking up flowers that need to open, and then the more delicate flowers closer to the wedding date, conditioning them, and then designing them, transporting them. Delivering them. There's a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, isn't there? It's a bit like us celebrants. People often ask us why we cost what we do, because we just rock up for half an hour and read from a piece of paper. And the reality is that, I guess like you, there are various meetings involved, and research, and all the legal stuff, and charging up the PA system and the microphone, and downloading music, and getting there early on the day. It's massive. It's many hours work, and it's the same for you. So I guess that leads on to my next question, which is why do wedding flowers cost so much? And I suppose you've partly answered that already.
Yeah, because there is a lot of work, and a wedding, you want to get it right, and you want the flowers to look at their premium. And the design as well, aspect of it, the transportation, the delivery, the setup, the pack down, the cleaning up after, which I make a massive mess. So there is a lot of work involved, and you can have spent many hours you know, on that particular wedding, just even before you pick up the flowers. So there is a lot. And flowers aren't cheap anymore. They are, even for florists. So.
Do most of them come from Australia, or are they imported?
Some come from Australia, some are locally grown. We live in an amazing area where there's a lot of locally grown things. They're specialty roses that you see a lot on Instagram. They are usually imported, so that they are more expensive.
So, you know, really you're paying for the quality,
Absolutely.
aren't you? And for
The
your
look.
your expertise
Yeah.
in being able to pull it all together.
Yeah, and look, your bouquet is the most important thing that the bride's gonna wear. Not the most important thing the bride's gonna wear, but the accessory. One of the most important accessories in most of the photos. So you really want it to look at its best.
And it's a long day, isn't it? That particularly that bouquet has to last.
Yeah, it is a long day, you know, that's where the conditioning and picking up the flowers at the right time comes into play.
And you know, this weekend's event, it's very much about a garden party and things happening in gardens. So thinking about wedding flowers for a garden wedding, there are extra things to take into account, aren't there? Like, it isn't today, I'm absolutely freezing at the moment, but I've done weddings in 40-degree heat outside.
Yeah, that's a challenge. And, you know, wind also is a challenge, as we've seen today.
Do you want to talk about the wind today?
Well, they've survived okay after being blown over a few times. But
I just want to say that I have learnt some very secret florist tips today about how to keep arrangements absolutely rock solid in, I don't want to say gale force wind, but it has been really windy here today.
So there is a lot to... Outdoor weddings are beautiful, but there is more involved in an outdoor wedding. And the time of the ceremony, you know, if you do have ceremony flowers, is the sun going to be beaming right on them? So really doing it at the last minute as possible. Sometimes the venue also has very strict times when you can go into the venue and when you need to leave the venue. So that requires extra staff, particularly if you're doing a ceremony piece, a big piece, or a hanging installation.
How can couples save money?
Yeah, good question. It's a very good question.
I suppose that's the one everybody asks.
Yeah, definitely reusing your flowers like your ceremony pieces if you can. Your bouquets, using them as centerpieces or, you know, around the cake table, reusing those at the reception.
Because often people can have quite a number of bridesmaids, can't they?
Yeah, and that will up the cost, you know, because you're paying for more flowers, you're paying for more dresses, all that kind of thing, makeup, hair, you know. Yeah. So that is another way, I suppose.
They're not going to be holding the bouquets while they're eating and dancing, are they?
No, and that's why you need to reuse them at the reception. Like, because often, you know, the bouquets definitely get forgotten at the reception because they're not needed anymore. But you can definitely reuse them again, and, you know, make a beautiful kind of centerpiece or, you know, display out of them. Even grouping them together can make them look really, really good.
And you mentioned before, with something like this, you could take it inside to where you were having your reception.
You could, yeah.
What if you really want to go for that wow factor?
So, for me, the wow factor is definitely the big dried palm leaves look awesome. Even the curly leaves at the end. That definitely for me adds a bit of drama. But not everyone likes that. So I think it's really important for the bride to choose the style that they love, and, you know, really, really go with that.
And I guess if you're outside having a garden wedding, like we are at our little, it's not a wedding, but it's a celebration today, that would be a way of saving some money as well, wouldn't it? Because you're surrounded by the natural beauty, whether it is a garden or one of the national parks or
you can
forest.
Absolutely use your venue to the most. Like if you can't afford, if it isn't in your budget, to have, you know, big ceremony pieces, and they aren't cheap, you know, look at your venue and see where you want to take your photos, and the photographer will do that as well. But make the most of your venue and the beautiful spots in your venue.
That's a good tip. Now, I know for a little while there, artificial flowers
Yeah.
they were a big no-no, weren't they? Is it okay to use fake flowers at your wedding?
I think they have a place, particularly on your 40-degree days, where, you know, your flowers are just going to burn in the sun. So, or if there's a specific flower that you really want and we're not able to get that, they have definitely improved in their look, depending, you know, where you go. They definitely can look very authentic, and mixing them with the fresh flowers as well. Yeah, you wouldn't even know in some cases, yeah.
And that's what we've done today, isn't it?
Well,
I
there's
say we. It was all Lou.
there's no fake flowers in this. It's all dried and it's all dried. So the flowers are fresh. And everything else is dried or preserved. So, and that's definitely the look at the moment.
And like you said, that the variety of textures that it gives adds an extra dimension, doesn't it?
Absolutely, it can make a big difference. Yeah, and when you have more texture, that will increase the price because you're ordering more things to give you that texture. You're not just having 3 things in your bouquet. You may be having, you know, 6 to 7 different varieties in your bouquet. But that actually can also add to the wow factor, is the texture.
And like you say, you know, it's a really good thing to focus on that bouquet.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, have you got any top tips for people organising their wedding flowers?
Look, it's easy to say enjoy the process, and I know there's definitely moments where, you know, it's going to feel like too much sometimes, but not to overthink your decisions. Sometimes that can really you know, put you in a hole that you don't need to go down. And if you've got really good suppliers and let them do their work, then you should be able to enjoy your day. Yeah.
I'm sure there will be a link on this Facebook Live thing.
Okay.
But just for anyone who's not good with technology like me, where can we find you?
Okay, so I'm on Instagram at The Redwood Florist. Also website, The Redwood Florist. Facebook, The Redwood Florist. Yeah, so you'll find all the information to get in contact with me if you're there.
And does The Redwood Florist live near the Redwood Forest?
Yes, we do. Yes, we're just up the road. So I've done weddings there too, so yeah.
Yeah, and if anyone's watching, it's one of my celebrant goals to actually do a wedding at the Redwood Forest. So please get in touch with me. Have you done many there?
I've done a few. Yeah, it's a beautiful venue. Beautiful spot.
Yeah, and that's a great example, isn't it, of somewhere that really doesn't need anything else.
Yeah.
But what kind of arrangements have you done for there, if any?
So the ones that I've done, because it doesn't really need anything, it's mainly just the bouquets. Because what it's usually that they get their photos there, not necessarily get married there, but the ones that I've done, I know people have got married there and it's looked amazing. And I have got some coming up actually that have ceremonies there. Yeah.
Have they got a celebrant?
I don't know.
You'll have to ask.
I will.
Oh, well, thanks so much for
No
dropping
worries.
by, Lou.
Yeah.
And I think now we should have a glass of Yarra Valley bubbly
Awesome.
and some cakes.
Awesome.
Let's do
Watching
it.
one beside.
Before we put on our masks again.
Yes.
Like, you guys have got an absolutely amazing backyard and it's beautiful, and this is like the kind of space, if you just want something low key, you could do that. I mean, do people actually get married in their backyards though?
Yeah, of course they do.
Oh,
Yeah, and
no.
I do, like, if people just want a legals only, just with, you know, a couple of witnesses, then I do that here. Obviously, I'm not set up because of the hillside to do any more than that. I haven't got anywhere flat that will take more than about 6 people, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, they're becoming more and more popular, and you can get married anywhere you want in Australia, even up in the air.
Really?
As long as you stay under 12 kilometres from the ground. I think that's right.
Yeah.
And 12 nautical miles off the coast, then you can get married anywhere.
So it's perfectly legal to get married in your backyard.
Yes, I mean, as long as you've got a celebrant and the celebrant does the legal paperwork,
Yeah.
and there's a definition that we have to include in the ceremony,
Uh-huh.
which is 140 something words.
Uh-huh.
But those are the only legal components.
So, today, we're out here, it's really beautiful, but it's like a little bit windy. I mean, what are the other things that people think about when they ask you about having a wedding in their backyard?
I think it's more the things they don't think about, Rachel,
Yeah.
like the weather, and it's so important to have a plan B.
Uh-huh.
You know what it's like living in Melbourne.
Yeah, yeah.
The weather can come out of nowhere, so it's either going to be 40 degrees day, or it's going to be pouring with rain or hail or really windy like it's been this afternoon.
Yeah.
So you really need to take that into account.
Uh-huh.
So we're talking making sure there's shade for people, even if it's like personal shade, providing parasols or umbrellas. Because I think that's something often people forget about, that the couple might only be turning up just before the ceremony starts, but your guests are very often there way ahead of time, and
Yeah.
they're all standing around in the heat with no shade. So good to have shade, plenty of fluids to drink, water as well as the alcoholic variety.
Yeah.
What else have we got to think about? Bugs. Maybe some citronella candles to keep the mozzies away.
For sure. So, Sarah and I have, we've both got small families because they're overseas. Is that something that people are doing more and more, kind of small weddings? Like, it's a wedding, right? Like, what's the difference between a wedding, maybe, and an elopement? Like, what's the difference? Is there a difference?
Well, and there's a micro wedding as well. And the other day I read on a website somewhere, I think it was The Knot, they were talking about a mini-money. And I think they're trying to coin a phrase for
like
that.
a mini matrimony?
A mini money is what a lot of people are doing at the moment. So they're desperate to get married. Obviously can't do it
Yeah.
with a lot of people,
Yeah,
can't travel
get it.
far. So they're either having a sort of commitment ceremony and then following that up with a big celebration when they can,
Uh-huh.
or they're legally getting married and doing the same thing.
Yeah,
So,
there's the marriage component, but then there's the celebration after. Do you find people ask you about the logistics of that? Because you are a celebrant, but people have the party afterwards.
Uh-huh.
Do they ask you those kind of questions? Is it a consideration, or are you just like, I'm going to do the officiating and making sure it all starts off with a bang, and then I'm kind of I'm out of that situation?
well, should you ever need an MC, Rachel, I can do that. I can do that as well. So people do ask, and I think it's
Yeah.
it's part of our job to take into consideration the day as a whole.
Yeah,
because
right.
we're going to be liaising with other suppliers, even if it's just about the timing of the whole thing.
Yeah.
But no, we all want to work very quietly and smoothly behind the scenes to make sure everything goes with a flow on the day.
Yeah. So there's those logistical issues, but I guess there's other stuff like parking and all of that kind of, it's more, it's like a little event planning in a way as well, isn't it? Besides just the vows.
There's so much to think about.
Yeah.
So there is parking. And then there are things like accessibility as well. We're both living on this hillside.
Yeah.
So I don't think my parents could walk up and down this hill.
No, mine probably couldn't either, and we've got pretty rickety stairs in some places, but then again it's really beautiful. So I'd be like, put your boots on and then put your flats on kind of thing, but I'd still do it. So this mini matrimony type of thing, or whatever it's
A
called.
mini money.
Mini money. I don't know that many people could say the mini money, but I feel like it'll catch on like the frosé, maybe. It's a thing now.
Who knows?
So that's a thing. People are doing it. It's something that they're looking for.
There's the mini money,
Yeah.
which is where you organise you just have a very private
Yeah.
ceremony by yourselves, and then
Uh-huh.
plan to do the whole shebang that you were always dreaming of later on.
Right.
Then
okay.
there's the elopement.
Yeah.
And traditionally that was something where a couple ran away, and that very often it was without their parents knowing, and it was, you know,
Okay.
it was all a bit sort of done on the sly, whereas now it's got a bit of a flavour of about going to a special destination and just having amazing photos.
Yeah.
And then there's also a micro wedding, which is more like a full-on wedding, but with less people. I'll tell you a secret. I actually hate all the labels and the
Yeah.
names, because I prefer just to focus on two people who want to be together forever
Yeah.
and who want to get married and celebrate their love for each other. So whether they do that with 2 witnesses or 200 people or 2,000 people, like that just really depends on the individuals, I
Yeah.
think, and,
Yeah.
and what their tastes are.
People, they're doing the whole DIY right now.
That's it. I mean, there are backyard weddings and there are backyard weddings, and it
yeah.
isn't necessarily going to save you that much money,
Yeah.
because if you need, you know, if you've got more than 35 people coming, like I know how big your house is, you would probably want to hire some portaloo. You might need to get in a generator and some extra lighting for outside, and
Yeah.
I don't know, you might want to get in a live band and get the catering done. So, you know, it could be huge.
Yeah, well, I mean, absolutely. I guess that's the whole point, is that you don't have to worry about anything, and you still want all of that stuff kind of like taken care of, but just probably on a little smaller scale than, you know, like maybe our wedding would be like a couple of football teams plus, like, you know, and not like 100 people kind of full regalia, but it'd be just pretty small and intimate.
Well, I think, you know, you would want to have no more people than you could fit inside your house in case it started to pour with rain. I think having it in a garden or an outside space makes it extra sort of magical. I think there's a very special atmosphere. It could just be because I love being outside.
Yeah.
And I love my garden, and
Yeah.
I love being in the forest. So for me, you know, it would resonate with me and make it extra special. David and I went to a lovely wedding late last year, and it was a couple, and they basically had a house party for 4 or 5 days. So they hired an Airbnb, and her family came over from Russia, and his family came over from Tassie, and some of their best friends attended.
Yeah.
And I think in about the middle day that they were there, David and I rocked up and married them outside, and they had set everything up. So everyone there had helped to prepare the space, and her mum had arranged flowers, and, you know, they had shared the cooking, and they made a sort of a spiral on the ground with a rope. So instead of that traditional, you know, the bride being
Yeah.
walked in, they both walked in together holding hands, and they followed this spiral until they got into the centre, which was the ceremony space. And, you know, on the one hand, it was just so much fun and so low-key and easygoing and just completely comfortable and just joyous, because the people who meant the most in the world to them were there sharing it with them and helping them make it happen.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think we all went away with this sense of something really important and significant had happened in their lives.
I mean, it
that
sounds
day.
like more like a festival of family and friends than...
Exactly. And I always say to couples, you know, it's a bit like Fight Club, that there are no rules. Well, you know, there are one
yeah.
or two tiny little rules,
Yeah.
but you really can do it whatever way you want.
So, you know, you don't need permits or anything like that kind of stuff, obviously. Like,
You don't in a backyard.
Yeah.
I would probably think about your neighbours and just let them know what you're planning, especially
Yeah.
if it's going to be your 3 or 4 day festival, Rachel. David and I might arrange to go away for those few days.
Yeah.
But, you know, some of the beautiful gardens around here, like Periander Gardens and, you know, the Alfred Nichols and the other ones up here, you do have to get a permit from Parks Victoria.
Yeah.
So you just have to be a bit careful and do some research. But
And a bit
your
of planning in
celebrant, you know, you
advance.
can't get married without a celebrant.
Yeah.
And your celebrant will be able to advise
Tell
you
you.
on whether you need to get that permit or
Yeah,
not.
so I guess, you know, what we really need to do is like make sure we think about these things probably well in advance, because, you know, you may need a permit for some spaces, and also all the things that you need to think about. Like, I'm sure you have a running checklist now that just like a regular person wouldn't have thought of, especially if they're not big wedding people. There's some situations where you need like you know, to think about that stuff.
Well, you know, you don't have to think about it so much, because
Yeah.
by the time you speak to a celebrant,
Yeah,
a
they'll
celebrant will be all across that.
They'll be
and
like, "Have you
they'll-
thought of
yes,
this?"
exactly.
Yeah.
And I've got a bit of a checklist
Yeah.
that I give to people so they can run through what to think about for
Yeah.
different situations. We
I
just
mean-
want to make things as easy as we can for you. So all you have to do is worry about looking fabulous and
Yeah,
turning
right.
up on time.
Well, I mean, that's what hair and makeup is for. They can come to your house now and do that. So as long as they're allowed back in when the restrictions ease, you know, I think that's what a lot of brides will be worrying about. They're like, can my mum and dad come? Can my like best friends come? And can I get my hair and makeup done? Like,
Celebrants worrying about that too, let
Yeah.
me tell you. Yeah. Well, look, and when you're ready, if you want to talk about it further, pop over any time, Rachel.
yeah, I'll be sure to hit you up
Yeah.
for that checklist. Thanks,
No
Judy.
problem. Cheers.
Cheers.